Hello everyone, welcome to Full Moon Movies. Under Siege is one of those early 1990s action films that arrives from a very specific moment in Hollywood when the genre was still grounded in physical presence, practical effects, and clear moral divide between heroes and villains. Watching it today, especially through Arrow Video's 4K restoration, feels less like revisiting a disposable action vehicle and more like rediscovering a tightly engineered studio thriller that understood exactly what it was meant to deliver. The film opens with a simple but effective setup aboard the USS Missouri, a decommissioned battleship preparing for ceremonial journey. From the start, the movie establishes a contained environment, and that decision becomes one of its greatest strengths. The ship is not just a backdrop, it is the story's pressure cooker. Confined corridors, engine rooms, kitchens, and control decks turn into stages for suspense, ambush, and sudden violence. Now, this sense of spatial awareness is something many modern action films lack, and Under Siege benefits enormously from knowing exactly where its characters are at all times. Steven Seagal's Casey Ryback is introduced not as a celebrated hero, but as a cook quietly sidelined after disciplinary action. Now, this is important because Ryback's character works best when he is underestimated. Seagal's screen persona in the early 1990s was built around restraint rather than showmanship. He doesn't crack jokes, he doesn't seek attention, and he doesn't posture. Instead, he projects an almost monk like calm, which contrasts sharply with the chaos that erupts once the ship is taken over. The film wisely allows this calm to define Ryback's credibility. When violence occurs, it feels purposeful rather than flashy. As the antagonists reveal themselves, the film shifts gear with confidence. Tommy Lee Jones' performance as William Stranix elevates the entire movie. Jones plays the villain not as a snarling brute, but as theatrical, unhinged tactician who enjoys the performance of being dangerous. His unpredictability gives the film its edge. Every scene he's in carries tension because he seems capable of shifting from charm to cruelty in a single breath. Opposite him, Gary Busey's supporting villain adds the instability rather than discipline, which creates a dynamic where the enemy camp itself feels volatile. Now, this internal friction among the antagonists keep the narrative alive when the basic plot mechanics are too familiar. Now, what Under Siege does particularly well is pacing. The film never rushes its escalation. The takeover unfolds methodologically and allowing the audience to understand the stakes before the action peaks. Ryback's movement through the film feels earned, step by step rather than a series of conveniently staged encounters. Each confrontation is grounded in the physical layout of the ship, reinforcing the sense that this is a survival situation rather than a powerful fantasy. The action itself is surprisingly disciplined. There are no excessive camera tricks, no hyper edited sequences designed to disguise choreography. The fights are clear, brutal, and short, which makes them more believable. Seagal's Aikido based movement is presented as efficient rather than decorative, and the film avoids turning him into an invisible cartoon. He bleeds, he struggles, and he relies on strategy as much as strength. Now, this restraint is a key reason the film has aged better than many of its contemporaries. Erika Eleniak's role, often remembered for its surface level shock value, actually serves a functional narrative purpose. Her character provides a civilian perspective amid the military and the terrorist dynamics, and the film uses her presence to humanize the stakes without turning her into a constant liability. While the film undeniably reacts the gender politics of its era, it is also careful not to reduce her entirely to a passive figure once the story gains momentum. Director Andrew Davies deserves credits for maintaining tonal consistency. The film never tries to be ironic, never winks at the audience, and never undercuts its own tension with unnecessary humor. Now, this seriousness allows the narrative to hold together even when the premise borders on implausible. Davies treats the material as a thriller first and an action spectacle second, which is why the suspense sequences remains effective decades later. Now, revisiting the films in Arrow Video's 4K presentation highlights just how well it was shot. The restoration brings out the texture of the ship's interiors, the metallic surfaces, and the contrast between shadowy corridors and brightly lit control rooms. Grain is preserved rather than scrubbed away, giving the image a filmic weight that suits the material. Night sequences retain depth without crushing detail. The daylight scenes avoid the washed out look which is common in lesser restorations. The film benefits from this clarity because the spatial geography is crucial to the storytelling. The audio presentation is equally important. Gunfire alarms and engine noises carry weight without overwhelming dialogue. The score is restrained but effective, supports tension rather than dictating emotion. Arrow's release respects the original sound design while giving it a modern clarity which enhances immersion without betraying the film's era. Arrow Video's release also contextualizes Under Siege as more than just a Steven Seagal star vehicle. The packaging and the supplemental materials frame it as a key example of the early 1990s studio action filmmaking done right. Now, this was a time when mid-budget action films could rely on strong scripts, charismatic villains, and practical staging rather than sheer scale. Seeing the film presented with this level of care reinforces its place in that lineage. From a box office perspective, Under Siege was a major success and its popularity made sense at that time. It delivered a straightforward premise with precision and confidence, offering audiences a hero who was capable without being a smug and a villain who was entertaining without being cartoonish. And that balance is rare, and it explains why the film still resonates with viewers who return to it today. Now, what ultimately makes Under Siege endure is not nostalgia alone, but craftsmanship. It understands containment, escalations, and character contrast. It respects its audience enough to let tension breathe. In an era where action films often confuse noise for excitement, this film reminds us that clarity, restraint, and performance can be just as powerful. Arrow Video's 4K release doesn't reinvent Under Siege. In fact, it reveals it more clearly. It allows modern audiences to see the film as it was meant to be seen, not as a relic, but as a confident, well-constructed action thriller from a period when the genre still trusted simplicity and execution. For fans of the 1990s action cinema and for viewers curious about why this film once stood at the top of the genre, Under Siege remains a compelling and surprisingly disciplined watch. Now, this movie is a must-watch.